She spent 6 years chasing a law degree. She failed test after test in front of the entire world. And then, instead of hiding from the humiliation, she put it in a commercial, handed the punchline to one of the most feared attorneys in America, and turned her biggest failure into the funniest thing she's ever done on camera. This is the story of how Kim Kardashian lost the bar exam and somehow still won. To really understand why this moment landed the way it did, you have to go back further than most people realize, because this wasn't some overnight publicity stunt. This was the ending, or maybe the twist, in a story that had already been playing out in public for 6 long years. Picture it. The year is 2018. Kim Kardashian is already one of the most famous women on the planet. She has a billion-dollar business empire building underneath her. She has magazine covers, a hit television show, a life most people can barely imagine. And in the middle of all of that, she decides to do something nobody expected. She decides she wants to become a lawyer. Not an honorary title, not a brand deal dressed up as a law degree. She wanted the real thing, a bar card, the ability to actually practice law in a courtroom. Here's where the story gets interesting, because the path she chose wasn't the easy one. She didn't apply to a university law school. She didn't sit in lecture halls with other 22-year-olds fresh out of undergrad. Instead, she chose one of the hardest, least forgiving routes available in the entire country. California allows a small number of people to skip law school entirely and instead apprentice directly under a practicing attorney or judge, studying the law the old-fashioned way, through years of guided reading and real legal work. It's called the Law Office Study Program. Some people just call it reading the law. It sounds almost old-fashioned, doesn't it? Like something out of a black and white film. Some scrappy young clerk poring over law books by lamplight. But it's real and it's brutally difficult, and only a tiny fraction of people who attempt to ever make it all the way through. Why did Kim choose this path instead of a traditional one? By her own account, it traced back to something deeply personal. She had gotten involved in criminal justice reform work, helping fight for the release of a woman named Alice Marie Johnson, someone serving a life sentence for a nonviolent drug offense. Working on that case, sitting across from lawyers and judges, and watching how the system actually moved, Kim realized just how much she didn't understand about the law that was shaping people's entire lives. She said it herself. She felt like she was in over her head. Most people feel that kind of realization and simply hire a lawyer to fill the gap. Kim decided to become one instead. So, in 2018, she quietly enrolled in her apprenticeship. In early 2019, she went public about it, telling a major magazine what she was working toward. And almost immediately, the skepticism started rolling in. People online mocked the idea. Late-night hosts made jokes. Legal commentators rolled their eyes at the idea of a reality star studying to practice law, between photo shoots and business meetings. But here's the thing about underestimating someone who has spent an entire career being underestimated. It rarely works out the way people expect. Before Kim could even sit for the official California bar exam, the one that actually grants a law license, she first had to clear a much smaller, much crueler hurdle. It's nicknamed the baby bar. Officially, it's called the first-year law student's examination. It exists specifically to test people studying outside of accredited law schools, and it has one of the lowest pass rates of any exam in the entire American legal system. Most first-time test takers fail it. Many fail it more than once. Kim was one of them. Picture the moment. Months of study behind her. Legal textbooks stacked on her nightstand instead of magazines. Late nights memorizing case law instead of attending galas. And then, the test results come back. Fail. She takes it again. Fail again. On her third attempt, she was fighting something else entirely. She had COVID-19, running a fever of 104 degrees, and she sat for the exam anyway. She failed that attempt too. 3 failures. 2 years. Most people, no matter how much money or fame they had, would have quietly walked away. By that point, nobody would have blamed her. She had nothing left to prove to anyone. She could have called it a fun experiment and moved on with her life. She didn't. In December of 2021, on her fourth attempt, Kim Kardashian passed the baby bar exam, and when she announced it, you could feel just how much it meant to her. She didn't try to play it cool. She wrote, with pure, unfiltered excitement, that she was proud of the woman looking back at her in the mirror. She admitted, flat out, that it hadn't been easy, that it hadn't been handed to her, that she had failed the exam 3 separate times over 2 years before finally getting back up enough times to break through. That's worth sitting with for a second, because it's easy to assume fame buys you a shortcut through anything. It didn't buy her one here. The baby bar doesn't care how many followers you have. It just asks whether you actually know the material. And on her fourth try, she proved that she did. But passing the baby bar wasn't the finish line. It wasn't even close. It was just the entry ticket to years more of grueling study, because now she had to complete the entire law office apprenticeship program itself, which in California typically stretches across several years, before she'd even be eligible to sit for the real bar exam, the one that actually makes you a licensed attorney. So the clock kept ticking. Year after year, Kim kept showing up to the second, quieter job most of the world barely paid attention to, while her public life kept moving at its usual breakneck pace: campaigns, television shows, business deals, family milestones. In the background, there were law books, legal briefs, and study sessions squeezed into whatever hours she could find. In May of 2025, after 6 full years of work, Kim Kardashian officially completed her legal studies. She marked the moment with her own small commencement ceremony, surrounded by mentors and family, celebrating a milestone that had taken longer for her than a typical law degree takes for most students walking a traditional campus path. Now came the real test, the one everyone actually remembers when they hear the phrase bar exam, the official California State Bar Examination. 2 brutal days, 200 multiple-choice questions, 5 full essays, a performance test designed to simulate real legal work under real-time pressure. It is widely considered one of the hardest bar exams in the entire country, with a pass rate that leaves plenty of traditionally trained law school graduates walking away disappointed too. At the end of July 2025, Kim Kardashian sat for that exam. Now picture the wait that followed. Months. Not days, not weeks. Months of silence, of not knowing. While the rest of her life carried on in full public view, she was still filming, still promoting projects, still living out loud in front of millions of people, all while carrying the quiet, private tension of waiting to find out if 6 years of work had finally paid off. In November of 2025, the results came in. She hadn't passed. And here's where you really see who Kim Kardashian is underneath the fame, because she didn't try to bury the news. She didn't quietly let it slip out through a publicist's statement days later. She posted it herself, directly, in her own words, on her own platform. She joked, with a little bit of self-deprecating humor even in that painful moment, that she still wasn't a lawyer yet, that she just played a very well-dressed one on television. And then she said something that felt far more sincere underneath the joke. 6 years into this journey, and she was still all in. No shortcuts, no giving up, just more studying, and even more determination. If you know anything about how hard that exam actually is, you know this wasn't just a throwaway failure to shrug off. This was 6 years of sacrifice hitting a wall in front of an audience most people could never imagine having to answer to. Most people who fail the bar exam get to grieve that quietly, in private, maybe telling a close circle of friends and family. Kim had to process a very public disappointment, while millions of strangers online had opinions about it within minutes. Some of those opinions were kind, plenty were not. There's a particular kind of cruelty that shows up whenever a famous person fails at something ordinary people struggle with too. Instead of empathy, some corners of the internet reached for mockery, picking apart every detail, from her study methods to her motives, sometimes circling back to old, unrelated controversies just to pile on. It's the kind of pattern you see again and again with public figures. Success gets criticized as undeserved. Failure gets treated as proof that it always was. And there was a deeper layer sitting underneath all of it. 2. one that connects all the way back to where this story really began. Kim's late father, Robert Kardashian, had been a respected attorney, someone whose career shaped how the entire country thought about the justice system during one of the most talked about trials of the 20th century. For Kim, pursuing law wasn't just about personal ambition. It was about criminal justice reform work she deeply believed in. And, whether she said it outright or not, about walking a road that connected her back to her father's legacy. Failing that exam wasn't just a professional setback. It touched something much more personal. By early 2026, reports started surfacing that Kim was stepping back from the process entirely, at least for a while. California only offers the bar exam twice a year, in February and July, and sources close to her said she had decided to skip the February sitting completely. Not long after, word came that she wouldn't attempt the July exam either, meaning her earliest realistic shot at trying again would be sometime in 2027. If you go back and watch some of the footage from her family's show, you can actually hear her predicting this exact moment months before it happened. While studying, she told producers something that, in hindsight, feels almost eerily accurate. She said she really wanted to pass, but if she failed, she genuinely didn't think she would take the exam again anytime soon. She explained that with her busy life, she wouldn't realistically have time to prepare again for years, and by the time she circled back, she worried her mind simply wouldn't work the same way it once had. It's a strikingly honest thing to admit on camera. Long before the failure actually happened, most people wouldn't dare say it out loud, in case it turned into some kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, but she said it anyway. So by the spring of 2026, this whole story seemed like it might quietly fade into the background. A 6-year journey, real progress, a real setback, a pause that made sense given everything on her plate. It could have ended there, filed away as a footnote in a career built on dozens of other headlines. Except that's not what happened, because in July of 2026, Kim Kardashian did something that completely reframed the entire story, and honestly, it's the kind of move that only somebody with real confidence, real self-awareness, and yes, a very sharp sense of humor could pull off. She turned her failure into an advertisement. Kim had launched her own energy drink brand called Update, built around a caffeine-derived ingredient designed to give people sustained focus throughout the day, without the usual crash. And when it came time to introduce the brand to the world, instead of a polished, image-obsessed campaign trying to hide every imperfection, she leaned directly into the messiest, most talked-about parts of her public life. On purpose. Picture the ad. It opens at a mock press conference. Kim stands behind a podium while reporters fire off rapid questions. The kind of exaggerated scene you'd expect from a satire. Not a beverage commercial. They ask how she manages to get so much done in a single day. She answers, coolly, that her energy is simply different, before taking a sip from the can. Then the questions start getting cheekier, poking at some of her most talked-about tabloid moments over the years. And she handles each one with the same breezy, unbothered confidence. Then the scene shifts entirely. Suddenly, Kim is standing inside a glass display case, like some kind of museum exhibit, positioned as an object of fascination for a crowd of onlookers wandering by. She's shown working non-stop inside that case, plowing through an enormous pile of tasks while museum visitors stop to stare, comment, and snap photos. The visual gag being that Kim Kardashian herself has basically become a public spectacle people study up close, like an artifact behind protective glass. One onlooker in the ad references an old controversial soundbite of hers from a past interview, delivering the line with a mix of confusion and disbelief while staring at her through the glass. It's a wink at her own history of viral moments, the kind of self-aware humor that shows she's fully in on the joke rather than trying to dodge it. And then just when you think the scene is winding down, the ad delivers its real punch. Gloria Allred walks into frame. If you don't already know who she is, Gloria Allred isn't just any lawyer. She is one of the most recognized, most feared civil rights and women's rights attorneys in the entire country, with a career spanning decades of high-profile cases that regularly made national news. She has represented survivors, whistleblowers, and public figures navigating some of the most consequential legal battles in modern American life. When Gloria Allred walks into a room, people pay attention because it usually means something serious is about to happen. In the ad, she walks straight up to the display case, looks at Kim, and asks a simple, pointed question. Did she ever actually pass the bar? There's a beat, a pause, the exact kind of pause a good comedian knows how to hold. And then Kim delivers the line that instantly became the entire point of the campaign. She says, plainly, that no, she didn't pass the bar. She raised it. It's a perfect little piece of comedic writing because it does two things at once. It acknowledges the failure completely. No dodging, no spin, no pretending it didn't happen. And in the very same breath, it flips the entire narrative on its head, turning 6 years of very public struggle into a punchline that somehow still makes her look sharp, self-assured, and completely unbothered by the whole thing. Think about how difficult that tone actually is to pull off. Self-deprecating humor can easily read as either fake modesty or genuine insecurity if it's handled wrong. But by handing the setup line to Gloria Allred, one of the most respected legal minds in the country, the joke gets an extra layer of credibility. It's not some random comedian mocking her. It's an actual powerhouse attorney, playfully calling out the exact thing millions of people already knew, and Kim answering with total confidence instead of flinching. The internet, predictably, exploded with reactions the moment the ad went live. Plenty of people loved it. Comment sections filled up with genuine praise. Fans saying she was exactly who she claimed to be, unapologetically herself, willing to laugh at her own expense rather than pretend the failure never happened. There's something oddly likable about someone secure enough to hand the world a joke about their own most public disappointment, instead of trying to bury it. Of course, not every reaction was kind. Some corners of social media used the moment as another excuse to pile criticism onto her, questioning whether she was even serious about the legal career in the first place, or suggesting the entire 6-year journey had simply been another branding exercise all along. It's the same familiar pattern that's followed nearly every chapter of this story. Some people see determination, others assume calculation. Rarely does either side fully consider that both things might be true at once. A person can be building a brand and genuinely chasing a real, difficult goal at the very same time, without one canceling out the other. Behind the scenes, Kim spoke about the campaign with a surprising amount of warmth for something built around mocking her own failure. She explained that the creative team behind the ads loved sprinkling in playful little details, inside jokes, and a bit of a wink throughout the whole campaign. It wasn't framed internally as some cynical attempt to spin bad press into good press. It was framed as simply being honest and having a sense of humor about it. She also opened up, around the same time, about what the energy drink itself actually meant to her personally. Beyond the marketing gimmicks, she talked about being intentional with what she puts into her body and into her day, describing the brand as something that helps her stay focused, balanced, and present, regardless of how packed her schedule gets. Anyone who has followed her life even loosely knows just how packed that schedule really is. Multiple businesses, a reality show, raising 4 children largely as a single parent, a years-long side quest to become a licensed attorney squeezed into whatever hours remained. If anyone has a legitimate case for needing sustained energy without a crash, it's arguably her. Now step back for a second and look at the entire arc of this story from a distance, because it's a lot more interesting than just a celebrity making a funny commercial. This is a woman who, at the absolute peak of global fame, voluntarily signed up for one of the hardest academic paths in the American legal system. Nobody made her do it. She didn't need the money. She didn't need the credibility, at least not in any way that would have moved the needle on her existing empire. She did it because she said she wanted the real thing and because criminal justice reform had become something she genuinely cared about, tracing all the way back to advocacy work and, quietly, to her father's own legacy in the legal world. She failed the baby bar 3 times before finally passing on the 4th attempt. She spent 6 years total working through the apprenticeship program most people have never even heard of, She sat for one of the hardest bar exams in the entire country, and she failed that too, in full view of the public, with absolutely nowhere to hide from the result. And instead of disappearing quietly, instead of pretending the whole 6-year chapter never happened, she picked up the failure with both hands, walked it straight into a commercial, handed the best line to a legendary attorney, and let the entire internet laugh along with her rather than at her. That's not nothing. Say what you want about the industry she comes from, about the reality television roots, about the sometimes messy, chaotic nature of a public life lived that loudly. There's something genuinely admirable about someone secure enough in themselves to take their most public, most repeated failure and turn it into the single funniest 30 seconds of an entire ad campaign. It also says something bigger about how failure actually works in real life. Outside of movies and inspirational quotes, most stories about overcoming failure end with some triumphant victory. The person finally passes the test. They finally win. They finally get the thing they were chasing the whole time. That's a satisfying ending, but it's not always the true one. Sometimes the real ending looks like this instead. You try, you fail. You try again and you fail again. You keep going anyway. Not because you're guaranteed a win at the end of it, but because the trying itself became part of who you are somewhere along the way. And eventually, whether or not you ever cross that particular finish line, you find a way to make peace with where you actually landed. Sometimes that peace looks like quiet acceptance. And sometimes, if you happen to be Kim Kardashian with a global platform and a sharp sense of humor, that piece looks like turning the whole thing into one of the most talked about advertisements of the year. She still hasn't passed the bar exam, at least not yet. By her own account, she may not attempt it again until 2027, if she attempts it at all. Nobody knows yet how that next chapter ends. Maybe she finally gets the win everyone's been quietly rooting for, or quietly hoping against, depending on which side of the internet you happen to be standing on. Maybe she doesn't. Maybe the ad campaign becomes the actual final chapter of this particular story. A graceful, funny way to close, but here's the thing worth remembering. Long after this particular headline fades from everyone's feed, a woman who had absolutely nothing left to prove to anyone on the planet spent 6 years chasing a genuinely difficult goal anyway. She failed publicly, more than once, in front of an audience most people can't even imagine having to answer to. And when the final failure came, she didn't hide from it, didn't spin it into some carefully worded statement designed to make her look better than the situation actually was. She handed the punchline to Gloria Allred, looked the whole embarrassing chapter directly in the eye, and made it funny. That's a strange, very modern kind of resilience. Not the version where you triumph in the end, and everyone applauds. The version where you fail, in public, more than once, and instead of disappearing, you simply keep showing up, keep laughing, and keep moving forward anyway. One energy drink and one bar exam attempt at a time. Whether or not Kim Kardashian ever actually becomes a licensed attorney, that part of the story is still being written, but the part that's already finished says something worth remembering. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do with a very public failure isn't to bury it. It's to stand inside a glass box, let the whole world watch, and turn the punchline into the headline yourself before anyone else gets the chance to do it for you. Let's rewind for a moment, though, because there's a detail in this story that's easy to skip past, and it deserves more attention than a passing mention. The fact that Gloria Allred agreed to appear in that commercial at all is, in its own quiet way, almost as interesting as the joke itself. Gloria Allred didn't build her career doing cameo appearances in beverage commercials. She built it representing people who had nowhere else to turn. Survivors of harassment, women fighting for equal treatment in workplaces that didn't want to listen, high-profile clients navigating legal battles that made front-page news for weeks at a time. For someone with that kind of resume to step into a 30-second ad and deliver a punchline about a bar exam, it tells you something about how far this particular joke had already traveled through the public conversation. It wasn't an obscure inside reference anymore. It had become common knowledge, common enough that one of the most serious legal figures in the country was willing to have a little fun with it on camera. There's also something quietly clever about the specific choice of Gloria Allred, rather than just any attorney willing to do a cameo. Her presence in the ad does more than deliver a punchline. It acts as a kind of stamp of legitimacy, hovering right next to the joke. If a legendary civil rights attorney is comfortable standing next to Kim Kardashian and playfully needling her about failing the bar, it signals, whether intentionally or not, that the legal community itself isn't holding some deep grudge against her for trying and failing. It reframes the entire narrative as good-natured rather than embarrassing, playful rather than pitiful. Marketing people have a phrase for this kind of thing. They call it disarming the critics before they even show up. If you make the joke yourself first, and you make it funnier and sharper than anything a critic could come up with on their own, there's very little left for anyone else to mock. You've already said the meanest possible version of the story out loud, on your own terms, with your own timing, and turned it into something people laugh along with instead of at. It's worth comparing this moment to how other celebrities have historically handled public failure, because the contrast says a lot. Plenty of famous people, when faced with an embarrassing headline, choose silence. They let their publicists release a brief, carefully neutral statement, and then they simply wait for the story to fade from the news cycle, hoping the next celebrity headline will bury it. That approach works sometimes, but it also leaves the door open for other people to control the narrative in the meantime, for commentators and critics to define what the failure means before the person at the center of it gets a chance to define it themselves. Kim took the opposite approach, and it's a pattern you can actually trace back through her entire law school journey if you look closely. When she failed the baby bar 3 times, she didn't hide those failures either. She announced them herself, in her own words, on her own platform, wrapped in enough honesty and vulnerability that the story became about persistence rather than embarrassment. When she failed the actual bar exam in 2025, she used the exact same playbook, posting the news herself, adding a joke about playing a lawyer on television, immediately followed by a sincere promise to keep trying. And when the ad campaign rolled around in 2026, she took that same instinct and turned it into an entire creative concept. There's a lesson buried in that pattern, whether or not you're a fan of hers. Controlling your own story, even when the story includes failure, tends to leave you in a stronger position than staying silent and hoping nobody notices. Silence creates a vacuum, and vacuums get filled by whoever is loudest in the room. By speaking first, and by speaking with humor instead of defensiveness, Kim consistently managed to stay the author of her own narrative, even during its most embarrassing chapters. Now let's talk for a moment about why this particular story resonated so widely, well beyond just the usual audience that follows Kardashian family headlines. Because if you think about it honestly, almost everyone watching that commercial has failed at something significant in their own life. Maybe not a bar exam specifically, but a certification, a promotion, a degree, a test that mattered enormously to them and didn't go the way they hoped. Failure is one of the most universal human experiences there is. And yet it's one of the experiences people talk about least, especially in public. We live in a culture that is very comfortable celebrating success stories. Someone gets promoted, everyone claps. Someone graduates, everyone posts congratulations. But when someone fails, particularly fails more than once at the exact same thing, the instinct in most of society is to look away, to change the subject, to let the person quietly deal with it in private rather than acknowledge it out loud. Kim Kardashian, whatever you think of her, refused to follow that script. She kept talking about her failures publicly, year after year, attempt after attempt, and in doing so, she ended up modeling something that a lot of people privately needed to see. That failing at something difficult, more than once, in full view of other people, doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can just be one chapter in a much longer one. Think back to that baby bar exam again for a second, because the numbers behind it are genuinely staggering when you actually look at them. The pass rate for first-time test takers on that exam typically sits in a range that would shock most people who assume any test is beatable with enough effort. It isn't just difficult. It's specifically designed to filter out anyone who isn't showing complete command of first-year legal material, precisely because it exists as a gatekeeper for people studying outside the traditional, heavily resourced law school system. Students at accredited law schools have access to study groups, professors holding office hours, decades of institutional exam prep material passed down through generations of students. People in the apprenticeship program that Kim chose largely have to build that infrastructure for themselves, studying primarily through independent reading, with far fewer built-in support systems. Knowing that context changes how you might look at those 3 consecutive baby bar failures. They weren't a sign of laziness or a lack of seriousness. They were, if anything, evidence of just how steep the specific hill she'd chosen to climb actually was. Plenty of people attempt that same alternative legal path and quietly give up somewhere along the way, deciding the traditional law school route, or simply a different career entirely, makes more sense. Kim kept going. Through 3 failures, through a serious illness during one of those attempts, until she finally broke through on the 4th try. And then, rather than resting on that milestone, she spent years more completing the actual apprenticeship itself, the unglamorous, unphotographed years of legal study that never made headlines the way a viral commercial does. Most of that time, the public simply wasn't paying attention. There were no cameras following her study sessions day to day. There were no viral moments capturing the actual grind of preparing case briefs or memorizing statutes. That part of the journey happened mostly out of sight, which makes it easy to forget just how much invisible effort sat underneath the eventual, very visible failure in 2025. It's worth pointing out, too, that failing the official bar exam doesn't actually erase everything that came before it. Kim still completed a 6-year legal apprenticeship program that a significant percentage of people who start never finish. She still passed one of the hardest gatekeeping exams in the entire system on her 4th attempt, after genuinely difficult circumstances. Failing the final bar exam is a real setback, and it's the one that got the most attention precisely because it's the last step, the one everyone was waiting to hear about. But it doesn't erase the years of real, demonstrated legal knowledge that got her to that final exam in the first place. That distinction matters, because a lot of the online mockery that followed her failure treated the entire 6-year journey as some kind of joke from the very beginning, as though none of it had ever been real. But the record actually tells a different story. Real coursework, real exams passed along the way, real setbacks handled with real persistence. The final exam simply hadn't gone her way yet. In the same way it doesn't go plenty of traditionally trained law students' way on their first attempt either. There's an interesting parallel worth drawing here to her career as a whole, actually. Long before the law school chapter, Kim Kardashian had already spent years being underestimated by people who assumed her fame was the whole story, rather than a starting point for something bigger. Critics dismissed her business ventures as vanity projects, right up until several of them grew into genuinely massive companies valued at levels that quieted a lot of that early skepticism. The same skepticism showed up again the moment she announced she wanted to study law. And in some ways, the skepticism never fully disappeared, even after she cleared genuinely difficult milestones along the way. Maybe that's part of why the Gloria Allred had landed so well with so many people. It wasn't really about the bar exam at all, not entirely. It was about watching someone take a very public, very repeated source of doubt about her, and instead of running from it, standing directly inside it, literally inside a glass display case, and turning the whole thing into a punchline delivered with total confidence. There's something satisfying about watching anyone do that with the things people have used to doubt them, regardless of who that person happens to be or how famous they already were beforehand. Zoom out even further, and this story becomes less about one specific commercial and more about a much older idea, the idea that failure and reinvention have always traveled together throughout history. Long before social media turned every setback into a headline within minutes, people have always failed at things that mattered enormously to them. What's changed is simply how publicly those failures now get processed, dissected, and in Kim's case, occasionally turned into 30-second advertisements viewed by millions of people within days. There's a version of this story where Kim Kardashian eventually retakes the bar exam in 2027, finally passes, and the whole narrative gets rewritten one more time into a classic underdog triumph. Reporters would likely frame it exactly that way. 6 years, 3 baby bar failures, 1 very public bar exam failure, and then, finally, victory. It would make for a satisfying headline, the kind that closes a long story with a bow on top. But there's another version of this story, too. One where she never retakes that exam at all. Where the Update Energy drink commercial ends up being the actual final chapter of this particular chase. And if that's how it plays out, it's worth asking whether that would really count as a failure at all, or whether choosing to walk away, on her own terms, after genuinely trying for 6 years, might actually be its own quiet kind of resolution. Not every long pursuit needs to end in the exact victory it originally set out to achieve. Sometimes the pursuit itself, and the way someone chooses to carry its outcome, whatever that outcome turns out to be, becomes the real point of the story. For now, what we're left with is a moment, a glass case in a museum-style commercial, a legendary attorney walking into frame with a pointed question, and an answer delivered without a flicker of hesitation, turning 6 years of very public struggle into 8 perfectly timed words that millions of people have now watched, laughed at, and quoted right back at her online. She didn't pass the bar, she raised it, and whether or not she ever actually earns that law license, it's hard to argue she didn't already win the moment in her own way, on her own terms, exactly the way she's handled nearly every other headline about herself for the last 2 decades.